and I got started in coding, less than a year ago. It's still very new. But then I found this wonderful organization, and I have learned so much from the Milspouse coders. It's just exciting. So today we are going to talk about coding stuff, which I'm very familiar with. And John has been a great help to me. He's my mentor. And he is, and we have great conversations about code, and he's helped me through some homework assignments that I have. But today we're going to go over just some basic things, the paths you can take in terms of learning, different careers that are available, and all of the resources that between John, myself, and Autumn have found and have enjoyed using, stuff that we like. And then, we've got a lot to share. It'll be fun. So again, we're just going to briefly talk about the code world. Most people don't realize where code is. Code is in everything, it's in more than just your cell phone. It's in your washing machine. It's in your refrigerator. It's anything that's got an interface on it with a Windows box and you click something. Pacemakers. And then your neighbor's tractor is going to have, if they've got an up-to-date, farming equipment, something like that, code's going to be there. And you may not know it, but it's there. So some famous coders, Ada Lovelace. Ada, 1830s? Do I have that right, John?
I think so.
Something like that. Lord Byron's daughter helped get the code started. So, it's, girl power right there. Of course, Bill Gates, Grace Hopper, Steve Wozniak. And look, over there in the corner, that's you. That's you. So the really exciting thing about this group is that there's just a lot of support, since we all know what the military world is like, what it's like to be a spouse or a soldier, airmen, all of you guys, everybody. We know what that's about. So that's that second, way to connect. Our second, I think Autumn and I, we found that we've got like a million things in common, and we've only met like a month ago.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people with a lot in common in this group.
Yeah. So I think that's one really exciting way that we're going to be able to connect and learn more from each other. Okay, so this is how I started. I am a self-taught coder. So for me, quick story, last summer, we were moving. We moved from Fort Bragg to central New York. So we were just south of Fort Drum. And my husband left a book out on coding iPhone apps for kids. Well, I was bored. And I'm like, what bored person picks up a book on coding? Picked it up. I couldn't put it down. I completed the book and multiple apps within 2 weeks. And I was hooked, absolutely hooked. The really neat thing about the self-taught path is you can do it your own way, on your own time, at your own pace, and there's resources everywhere. And it's the lowest cost option. I mean, you could just use the web. There's great, things on the web. I like books. I'm a book person. But I think a lot of coders start this way. John, Autumn, anything to say about that?
Yeah, I can chime in really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't go down the self-taught route. I know people who did, and the way they learned was through trial and error. I have heard interviews that people thought self-taught programmers were really good just because they had the grit and the positive mental attitude to push through it, and because they were doing it by themselves, they actually figured out a lot of things on their own. And sometimes they didn't know that they were doing, I guess, what you call best coding practices, because they didn't have the name for it. They just were doing it, and then people have commented and said, wow, your code is clean, you've done this, you've done that. And sometimes they've said that self-taught programmers are even better than people who've gone through college or boot camps, because they forged their own path pretty much.
I think you make a good point, especially figuring out how to solve the problem without anybody really guiding you. I've run into that a lot, so I'm able to debug really well now. So yeah. Boot camps. There are lots of boot camps available. So they're going to be accelerated, full immersion, and there's a lot of different kinds of boot camps, whether it's software development. One of my friends did databases. Some boot camps, they're either going to be like in person in like a school, or you can do them online too. A lot of them will give out certificates, which is great. Add that to your resume if you completed something. Add that right there. It's going to be a lower cost to medium cost, and I think medium cost maybe a couple $100. One of my best friends who I went to college with, she has a degree in child development, and we graduated in like 2001, 2002, so it's been a while. And she didn't like her job about 10 years ago, and she took a Microsoft. She did a Microsoft boot camp, and now she runs databases doing SQL and C#, and she's getting a master's degree, and her company is paying for it. So she does not have a bachelor's of science or even an associate's in computer science. She just did a boot camp, and she has a really great job. So this is an option in addition to learning on your own. College. Go to school. Yeah. College student.
Yes.
Absolutely. So you can associate, like me, I'm in school after I discovered that I enjoyed programming, and I couldn't put the books down. I went through withdrawal like I would with a novel. I went through withdrawal with programming books. It was hilarious. I am going to local community college and getting my degree or my associate's applied science in computer applications programming. So I've taken Python, I've taken C++, Visual Basic, and I only started that last year. And I'm an A student, yay me! And for those who don't know, I'm going to be 40 this year. So I'm back to school again, and I'm loving it. I'm having more fun this time than I did the first time around. So, and I think what's great is my instructors, I get in-person knowledge, and I can ask the questions from the career professionals who do it, on a daily basis. That interaction is wonderful. The only problem with college, you got to pay more. Like, I'm going to community college. If you can do that, great. I think my classes are about $650, not including textbooks, which are like $200 because the code textbooks are wicked expensive. But I'm fortunate that I'm able to do that. John's in school as well. John, what are you doing?
Well, I've gone back to school for fun because I love school. I think I have an addiction. It's really different. But actually, so I already have a degree in computer science. It was great that I did because that's something that I've always wanted to do because since I was little, I wanted to learn how to program so I could program robots and learn how to make video games, which I'm learning that on my own, which is really cool. Right now, I'm at my local community college doing Cisco networking. It's kind of like programming, except you're learning how basically your data packets go from your computer to the internet and then from the internet and back. And it's actually this process, but it happens so fast that you're not aware of it. But there's a troubleshooting ladder that you follow when nothing works. That's why you'll see people will say, well, my internet's out. Well, maybe not all the time. Maybe there's other reasons. Maybe your router's dead or something like that, or maybe there's something on your local machine. But I'm doing it because it'll help actually pretty much augment my programming. Having a programming background has helped me just for learning how to set up routers for Cisco, because that's really cool, actually. And it's pretty straightforward. Once you learn it and once you actually have the hands-on experience, you'll be fine. But it's just really cool. I can speak about the traditional and online learning. If you're doing online learning, because I did that for my computer science degree, It does take a lot of discipline. You will miss out on the organic social part that comes in. And I find that a lot of students miss that. So they will stay in class because that side talk conversation does actually help you, because people will just chime in like, oh, I know this, or I know that, or they'll be willing more to help you. But online, when you want help, it's kind of hard to do it because everybody's working, everybody's doing their own thing, and it's all across time zones too. Um, I can also say, if you're going the college route, it pays to do your due diligence to find the program that works for you, because not every computer science or software engineering or web development program is the same. Um, not all of them are going to teach. Oh, hi, Michael. Not all of them are going to teach the same language starting out. Not all of them are going to have the same instructors, and the instructors may or may not be tapped into the industry. It's just a matter of who's teaching at the time. So it pays to actually do that. That's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah.
Hi, Michael.
Hello. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you,
Good.
sir?
Yeah, I was having issues. My computer still won't go. I want to go on my computer. Now I'm on my cell phone.
But we can see you and we can hear you, sir.
Oh, sweet. Do I need to mute?
Yes, please, mute.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem.
Great.
All right. We can still see
But
it.
I'm doing the college route too, but doing self-taught on the side. I'm going to UMUC online, but I do miss the interacting social aspect for sure, and being able to ask questions in person.
This past semester for me, I had one online class, and then I had one class one night a week, which is really all I can do because I've got kids, I've got a husband, I'm responsible for a million different things. That's the only way I could get it to work into my schedule. So I'm not a full-time student, I'm very part-time. But the interaction that I got with the in-person class was beyond was beyond great, because I was able to interact with my peers and turn around and say, hey, I can't get this to work, any ideas? And we could help each other out. But it's going to be different for everyone. You do what's going to work best for you. I love this chart. My professor showed it to me last semester. It's the popularity of programming languages, and it changes yearly, and it's indexed by just seeing how often a tutorial is searched for on Google, which I know they got a lot from me this past semester, how to do this in C++ or how to do this in Visual Basic. But it's going to change. Python is shooting up in the rankings there. So is JavaScript. As you can see, like Objective-C is dropping, which is not surprising because their Swift is becoming the primary. Objective-C and Swift are for iOS development. Or iOS, excuse me. But this changes yearly, and I think it's just a fun chart to look at.
I think Python's getting more popular too because you can use it for AI and data science and a bunch of other different things too. Like my best friend is a entomologist, and she uses it to map her data for her science project for her PhD.
That's pretty cool. And it's a lot easier to learn than any of the other languages, I think. I mean, in my opinion, of the languages I've learned. Of the 3 languages I've learned, I'm glad I started with Python because it helps you with, understand syntax, and it's a lot simpler, in my opinion. But we can move forward. All right, career paths, web development. Now, I don't know much about web development. That's not my path. Autumn or John, either of you want to talk about that?
Sure. So I've done Rails web development. Rails is, as you know, a lot of the different startups, they use it. They use it to make their web applications online for their different startups and whatnot. You can go that route because it's still a great way to make a website if you choose. And I've seen some people who've done that. I can tell you that for me, because I'm a visual learner, learning the front end was easier than learning the back end, even though you can do both. Looking at this picture on the right hand side, it does a very good job of demonstrating what it is. Like even though, yeah, it's a guy looking at a pretty beautiful mermaid here, and he sees the front end, and then you don't see the back end. And I don't know if the back end is supposed to actually represent something scary looking like that, but some people find that it is, so it might be the case. But
Sometimes it's a little scary.
Well, if it involves Java, it's just a little bit scary.
it really depends on what your, I guess, your forte is. Like sometimes manipulating pixels on the front end can be frustrating and whatnot because I've done that, but I prefer the back end because it's text based and I like reading, so I will do that. It's just a matter of you knowing where you are in your code and what it's doing up and down the stack. And I think this is where networking comes into play, because you know, like, hey, I'm doing this, and you push it to your remote server or whatnot, and then it comes back and what's happening through all the different chains that go back and forth. Full stack developers, I've heard they're good. I know most people primarily choose to focus on one or the other just because it's better to do that, at least I think, instead of having to go, okay, well, I'm doing this here, and then it's doing this in the front and then the back. I can tell you that from experience, just my own experience, web is I guess, the way to go if you're looking to get into a coding career, because I think it's easier, honestly, having done both web and mobile, and some other things too. Just a barrier to entry, it's really low, and you'll see jobs out there, I guess a dime a dozen, front and back end. So they may have different titles for them. Like you might see people looking for UX designers or UI designers, and they say they want those skills, but they also say, hey, can you code a little? If you can, that's pretty cool, because they're trying to, I've seen in job descriptions, they're trying to consolidate all this into one, which I don't really like that, because they're trying to pretty much hire you for one thing, but pretty much get you to do all of it, which is not really feasible, especially if they're tight on budget, because then they're taxing their one programmer or coding person or whoever they are, if they're a designer, and they're not getting their full use. Oh, we get a chat thing. Hold on a second. Amber said. Oh, that's cool. So Amber just said if you start with JavaScript for front end, you can be full stack with using JavaScript with Node. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. So that means you can use JavaScript for both parts, and then you're good. And that means there's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Amber, there's pretty much, I guess, if you would say, less to actually learn, because you're using JavaScript for front end and the back end.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, if you learn React, if you use React Native, you can actually develop for mobile applications as well.
Yes.
Which is pretty neat.
I've seen that too, yeah. That's another thing too. So it is on the next slide, but what Amber is alluding to, you can make mobile applications in the web using your web skills, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which is really cool. And that means if you don't want to, you don't have to learn Java or Objective-C or Swift for Xcode. And that way you can still make what you want and then push it, and then the code base, as far as I know, it'll automatically transform itself basically to fit your ecosystem that you need.
We forgot a learning path. We forgot the nano degrees, because a lot of people in our group are using these.
Well, that would fall under either boot camp or online learning.
And our resources at the end, we have a resource slide for that. So
yeah,
it'll be fine.
We'll talk about that too. All right, so moving forward, we've got software development. John, why don't you keep going, since you've got more experience here?
Okay, cool. So software development, I do it part-time. I can tell you guys what I'm doing. So basically, I'm using SQL and C# to write reports for companies that need them, specifically agriculture. It's pretty fun, just because it's text-based, it's back-end stuff. Software development, like you'll see job descriptions that are either software developer or software engineers. For the most part, people try to want them in all the same. It is what it here on the slide. You are using code and algorithms to write computer programs. You might debug here and there. You might write test cases here and there. But for the most part, you'll use what we have listed here: Java, C++, C#, Python, and other languages. Like you can develop software in any language. Like there are tons of languages out there. It's just a matter of you looking to see what's suited for your purposes. There is designing, installing, testing, maintaining software. That's pretty much what it is. Yeah, there isn't a whole lot anything else to it.
I know my husband's currently a test engineer. It's not the job he wants to be doing, but this is what he is. And he has to know, he barely knows Python. It's funny, I know more than he does. he's been coding for a long time, and and I already know more than he does. But he uses it to test products that are going to be put in use, and he says, hey, no, there's a breakdown here in this part, in this part, and they have to write these reports like John said, and then get them back to the developers and say, you need to fix this. So and that's a really cool part of the process as well, I think.
Yeah. So one more thing to add: when you are developing software, the best way to start is to either take a pen and paper or use a whiteboard and map out what you're trying to do. Like some of the things I've heard in interviews, if you start coding right away, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like you need to know what your goal is and how to get there and where you're going. This is where requirements specifications come into play. Like, because the business side of the house will always say, we want this, we want that, we want all the bells and whistles. And then programmers will push back and say, well, we can do this, but we need to rack and stack which is higher priority, because some things need to be done before others, depending on what you're doing. Like if you're in the financial or medical, or even in some kind of government thing, those kind of institutions, they have higher requirements for software than other places do, because you're dealing with a lot of personal information or other information out there. Oh, get a chat thing. Okay. Autumn says, getting used to planning your code will help you in your whiteboarding interviews as well. Yes, it will. So like in interviews, they want to see that you know how to think on your feet and can plan your code without writing it, because they want to see how you think. And when they learn how you think, they can determine whether or not you may or may not be a good fit for their company.
Now, I've heard that a lot from whether it was professors or other people in the industry, exactly what John just said. And I realized that planning my code is a lot easier than just sitting there and, let's write this. The plan is very helpful.
Yeah.
It helps you not to get stuck and frustrated also.
Yes.
Unless your kids come to your whiteboard and wipe it off and draw pictures.
Cool.
That does happen.
Very cool. Some other career path you have mobile app development. Just for those who don't know, your choices are Android, iOS, and then hybrid development. Android's popular, it's out there. It's good because you have one language to learn. The website there, developer.android.com, has a lot of help to get you started, and so does Apple's developer, apple.com too. Like it'll help you get through setting up your development environment, writing your first app, helping you get set up with a store account for Google Play Store or the Apple Store, and they have all different requirements to actually publish your app. But your best way, I think, if you wanted to actually try going through the whole life cycle of making an app and then putting it to the store, would be to go to Android, because as far as I know, still there's only a one-time developer fee for Android, but with iOS you're paying yearly. So most people, if they're developing apps and they're actually making money, they'll go with iOS because is where the moneymaker is. I've not dealt too much with hybrid development, which is, like we said earlier, it's you're using web technologies to build your app, but you're building it in the web. So I highlighted Ionic only because I have used it before. I liked it because it was pretty much a drag and drop user interface to actually develop your user interface, and then maybe also develop your user experience, and then you'll write code to make it behave what you need, and then there are different other parameters you can use to make it behave more towards Android or iOS or both. So it's really up to you which route you want to go. I can tell you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I can tell you that what they call native apps are developing specifically for Android iOS, so it'll depend on your needs. Typically, native apps work faster, and they're closer to the phone as far as code goes. But like I said, it really just depends on your needs, like what you really like. I've seen a lot of businesses go the hybrid route because they maybe cannot afford to pay a Android developer or an iOS developer, so they can do it in house, and they can teach themselves how to do it and put something out there that's basic because you might see for businesses that are out there.
Mm-hmm. I've been doing Android development using Android Studio. I'm in a course through Udacity, which we will talk about in a little bit. And I enjoy it. Android is going to be the top used device in the world. I forget what the percentage is, but it's ridiculous. It's well over 80, probably closer to 90% of mobile devices in the world are Android. So there is a huge market for Android. The Android developer or developer.android.com site is very useful. It's very good. It's very clear. And the instructions they give, or just the vocab, it's easy to understand. Like, I've used the Microsoft Developer Network, and that's just a pain in the butt. They don't describe or give any real help with it. I feel lost on that site. But the Android developer site is great. I've actually got Android open on my computer here somewhere. So if anybody wants to see it later, I can open that up and just show you how that works. But in the Android environment, you create your layout using XML, which are going to be your design features, and that's super easy. And then you make it all happen through Java in other windows. So I'm enjoying it. I like it. I like being able to create those GUI, the graphic user interfaces, and then making stuff happen with it. I feel like it's more, I'm actually seeing a product come about when I do it that way. When I did iOS last year, and that's how I started, which is probably a silly way to start, it was similar. Apple makes it easy. Xcode was easy to use, easy to get started, even for somebody who had no idea what they were doing. I used a book and they walked me through it. But I thought it was also very easy to understand as well. Now, I haven't done any hybrid development, but I know that seems to be the way to go, because nobody really wants to have an app created, because that can cost a ridiculous amount. So I think hybrid development is going to be a big thing, in my opinion.
Hey, Carly, so when you were doing iOS development first and then comparing it now to Android,
Mm-hmm.
did you find Objective-C easier to learn than Java or harder? I'm just curious.
Didn't you use Swift, or did you?
Yeah. So iOS is switching primarily over to Swift. Objective-C is the older language, and it's still there, but they're primarily using Swift now.
Okay.
So I know it's primarily Swift, but it was so similar to anything else I've already learned. I think that's what's really cool about the languages, is like, once you learn one, it's probably going to be okay to learn another one. You'll pick it up along the way. There's going to be similar syntax and that sort of thing. I'm having an easier time with Java because I learned C++. I'm like, oh, that's exactly the same as in C++. Look at that.
Which did you think was easier, Java or Swift?
Well, because I'm not, that's hard to say. I think they're probably about the same. Because the last time I did Swift was last summer. And I have a short attention span. So I need, and I want to get back to it to see, how similar it is, and get used to the IDE again, Xcode, because I haven't used Xcode in a while either. But they feel the same, if that makes any sense. The next career path we have here is the user interface and the user experience career path, the designers here. John, you touched on those briefly. Anything else you'd like to talk about here?
I can tell you that although it says UX and UI, for people who actually do this, because I spoke with them a lot because I wanted to understand this side of the house better because I don't know how to do it because that's just not my thing. They think that UI and UX designers are the same thing and that they do the same thing, which they don't. And if you know anybody who's hardcore either or both, they will stress on this a lot. And it is what it is. So the user interface, like they say, it is the visual component, but there's also the user experience, which is something you don't see, but you use it every day with whether you're on social media or your phone or your tablet. But it is something that is planned out to make sure that when you're maybe filling in a form or switching between windows, your experience is the best thing. And I know this part, just talking to people, it takes time, um, depending on their target audience. Like, I guess, if they're trying to go for mass population, they have to factor in people who might have visual disabilities or physical disabilities and things of that nature, because they'll find different ways to accommodate a larger portion of the population. Um, I know people have said it could be hard to actually go this route because it's more of an I mean, so it's more of an art than it is, I guess, if you will, a science, and it just takes time to build this kind of skill. Like, I can design stuff like just for my own purposes, but I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near being able to do it professionally, and I wouldn't want to do it professionally because it's just not my thing.
Coming from a, oh, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
Coming from a graphic design like background, I think UI and UX is kind of where graphic design is going. If you can, like, because print is kind of dying out, and I think that a lot of people, like a lot of ad agencies that are really like successful, have like people that like like that their whole job is to find their audience and like accommodate the audience's needs, and then you've got people who like go solely on marketing and then advertisement and all that, and you had web designers, and I think it's kind of like where that field is almost going and meeting code at the same time, because it kind of embodies a lot of kind of the traditional graphic design and knowing your audience, and then it adds coding to it because that's kind of where everything is going.
Absolutely. When you're starting to teach kids to code in school, you know that it's something that's catching on. The fact that I've taught my 9-year-old about loops, and he knows and he gets it, it just cracks me up.
My 4-year-old's favorite book is How to Code a Sandcastle right now.
That's fun. That's crazy. Resources. So there are tons of really great resources online. I've found some really bad ones as well. They're there. Personally, I've used a lot of Udacity. They have free and paid courses. I want to say it was last December, somebody posted on the Millspouse Coders page that Udacity was giving out scholarships for a front-end boot camp and then a Android Basics program. And I applied, as did some other people in Millspouse Coders, and a bunch of us got in. And it's just like an introductory course where you learn, whether it's front end or how to build an Android app. Well, after they had the basics course, they put out scholarships for you to continue to get a full-on nano degree. So I want to say with the first group, with the Android basics, or with that initial basics course for both front end and Android, I think it was 100,000 applicants applied to get in. They took 10,000. Then after that, the second part of the program to get the full nano degree, they took 5,000 of those 10,000. So there were some people got it, some people didn't. I'm not really sure what their criteria was. I'm very fortunate I got it. So I'm going to have a nano degree that I can put onto my resume. Say, hey, yes, I've completed this course. I'll be done with it before I finish my associates. And I enjoy Udacity. I think they teach things extremely well. And they have a lot of free programs. I know their full nano degrees are $500-$600 to do that.
Some are like 300 and some are like 199. I think it just depends on the course.
All
Their free
depends.
classes are pretty good too.
Yeah. My husband's using the Python course or something like that just to learn more.
So
Amber, you said you liked MIT OpenCourseWare?
MIT Open Course is awesome. It's basically going to like MIT lectures for free whenever you need it at like 12 o'clock at night when you need to do your homework. It's awesome.
So one thing to keep in mind with all these different courses online, yes, some of them do offer certificates at the end. That's really mainly only for your personal, I guess, satisfaction so that you can say, I completed something. But I can tell you that showing an employer or putting your resume, for the most part, most employers aren't going to recognize it because these institutions aren't accredited. Like even the MIT OpenCourseWare, they might offer certificates here and there, but if you're going to MIT, you're better off having the degree than having, say, I attended this free course online, because mainly all these things are mainly for your personal development. So the thing that you want to have to actually show an employer is a portfolio. That's really what they want to see. Like they want to see how you applied your skills, not so much, hey, I can do this, but if you have nothing to show, like let's say you're going to Udacity and let's say you're in the Android developers course, showing off your products and being able to explain, that'll actually help you more so than showing your certificate, because it is something that's recognized yet. And I highly doubt it will be recognized, because I know if you guys keep up with boot camps like I do, a lot of boot camps now, they're getting accreditation, especially the ones who offer the who accept the post 9/11 GI Bill, because they have to be accredited. That's a really long process, and I know most institutions won't spend the time or the money to actually do it. So having a portfolio will be your best bet. Being able to show it off and be able to actually explain your code and show it working. Like if they can see that, they can, employers know that you put in the time and effort to learn, and they know you're confident enough to hire and teach for them. That's just been my experience. Like
Some people don't even have degrees, so I think it's really projects or everything in general.
Yes,
Even if
that's
you
why.
have a degree, like wherever you're getting it from, I think Udacity's like best thing is probably the fact that they have so many projects in their classes and stuff. I think any good project you can get that you can learn from and that you can put on your GitHub and everything is positive.
That's it, you guys make a very, very excellent point. Because I already have, like, I didn't have GitHub. I have my own Git now, and I lost track. I keep adding projects.
They also have a really good GitHub class too, and it kind of teaches you some terminal and everything.
That's good, because GitHub can be confusing. Speaking, I spoke to somebody who owns his own business, and in terms of recruiting, he always said that basically, if you have the knowledge and you're able to show that you have the knowledge, whether it's via these projects, he's like, that's what makes you valuable. They want to groom you to be able to do the work that they have or that they need. So he said, if you'll be a good fit if you're able to be flexible and to be to take the time to learn and listen. I met so many coders, and if you've ever been on Stack Overflow, there's some people who get really stuck up about doing things their way.
They're ruthless, dude. Stack Overflow
You can be rude on Stack Overflow. There is no one way with code. We can all sit down and do something or write something in completely different ways, and it can still work. I think being open-minded is going to make you more valuable than in the end.
We have a few questions about GitHub. GitHub is a repository site where you can basically collaborate with other people remotely, but a lot of employers will look at your GitHub to like see your code and to see your project. So it's like industry standard at this point, I'm guessing, or it seems to me.
So just to add into that, GitHub, and it's basically called version control, but as they're saying, it allows you to upload whatever coding projects you have from anything to the cloud, which is just our remote server. So that way too, if your computer dies and you've backed it up to that, you can actually access it. And because it's public, anybody else can access it too, but it's a great way to share your code. Employers can see what you're doing, your progress, if you choose to show it, like, and from there. But not, so I can tell you one thing, some players harp on having a version control, something out there. Usually GitHub is the most popular, but I can tell you not everybody has one, which you don't have to. If you could show, one second. MJ link. Okay, I'll answer your question to MJ in a second. But for developers who've been in the game for a while, I know people have said you should be uploading code to GitHub every time to keep a streak. That isn't necessarily true. GitHub is mainly for you to actually keep track of your projects and share, basically. MJ has a question. So she said, what kind of products do you put on GitHub? Do they have to be something you originated yourself? To answer your first question, from my experience, put whatever products on GitHub that you like, that you could talk about if someone ever asked about it and you gave them your GitHub URL, and things that you actually want to share. Because I know some people who don't use version control at all, and they would keep everything on their local machine, which is fine. But if you're going to put it out there, just be ready to be scrutinized, because some people will find it because it's really easy to find, basically. Like, once it's there, it'll be there for a while. To your other question, MJ, do they have to be unique to something you're doing yourself? They don't have to be unique. Like, if you're following a tutorial, it's good to say, hey, I did this based on this tutorial, because if it's really popular, people can probably pretty much out you if you say, I did this myself, when you probably didn't. Like, so it's really good to give credit where it is and not say, I did this if you didn't, basically.
I think if you come up with some breakthrough piece of code, that's going to change the world, don't put it on GitHub. I wouldn't share it there. That's my thought anyway. All right, there's other resources out there too. YouTube. I've watched the new Boston videos. I've watched Derek Banas. Derek Banas is great. I know Amber likes CS Dojo. There are some good YouTubers, and there are some really bad YouTubers. I know past semester, looking for information on how to do certain something, and people will post videos of them just moving the mouse and doing things, but no audio of why they're doing it, or you can't understand them. These are the top recommended YouTubers for programming. And it's not necessarily just, it's not one code language or the other. Most of them are gonna do a variety of things, and they've got hundreds, not thousands of videos. Books. I love books. I'm a book person. No Starch Press. If you go to Amazon and you look for the most the most requested programming books, No Starch Press, it appears most of the time. Their books are really, really well written, and they're easy to understand. So from a beginner standpoint, they're fabulous. You can see those pictures on the right-hand side, JavaScript for kids or Ruby wizardry. Their covers are fun. There's a lot of artwork. I'm a visual person, so it appeals to me. There are some other, books out there. I've got some on my bookshelf that some of them don't explain things really well. I think I have a C++ book that I spent maybe $60 on, but it doesn't explain anything. And I compare it to my textbook for C++, and my textbook explained it a lot better, but it also, held some gaps in terms of not fully explaining a concept. So I always end up having to search more to try to get, to find somebody who can explain a concept in a real world situation, something that makes sense to me. And that's just how I work. I need a straightforward answer. But I like No Starch Press because they dumb it down a little bit. And I find that easy to understand. I guess that doesn't say much for me, but I like the simpler concept, because if, in my opinion, if you can't explain it to a kid and the kid can't understand, you're probably really not explaining it right. I've been able to explain some of these concepts to my kids using these books, and they get it, but it's the way that they present the material. I've also used Coding for Parents. It's a book designed for parents who are trying to teach their kids to code. So it's a lot of the basic concepts, whether it's, a type of a variable, where it's an int, a Boolean, what is a loop, a while statement. They keep it really simple. Just because you can use, or just because you have a huge vocabulary doesn't mean you can explain something really well. I've come across a lot of books like that. They'll throw in these big, huge terms, but they can't, explain a concept. I like these books because they explain it straightforward. We've got some other books on here that I know Autumn, you've used a lot of these.
Yeah, I have all of those. I think Python for Everyone is awesome because it's an open source class and book that the authors, I guess the first author gave permission to one of the Michigan University's professors, and he allowed them to make a free open source class. You can also take the same class on Coursera and audit the class. And they have a whole website with Python for Everyone.
Cool.
So I do want to chime in about books. Like Carly said, not all books are created equal. For me, I prefer books because it gives you a focused way to do something. Like, I know people do jump around with YouTube videos, but you'll have people explain it different ways. But I would suggest if you're first starting out, depending on whatever language is, find the book that works for you. And I think the best way to actually do that is to either go online, maybe on Amazon, and look at the table of contents of the book and see what it's saying. And then also, too, go into a bookstore that has, like, Barnes & Nobles or something, go in and flip through the book to see how they're presenting the material. Like, for me, because I use a lot of IDEs and I like my code to be color coordinated, like saying, well, this is my function, or this is my function statement, or whatever. I like that because I can visually see what's going on. But I will usually go to a bookstore, flip through color books, see how they explain, see what kind of background they have, because it helps if the person either teaches it or works in the industry, or both, and then see what further resources they've used to actually write the book. Like, for me, books are everything, and especially if they're, as you get more into advanced concepts, if you have that foundation, then they're pretty helpful. And I usually use YouTube to see how something is done that's already been a lot, like maybe making a calculator, or how to do something like maybe connect your computer to version control or something like that. But other than that, I know a lot of people who do teach online. From what I've seen, they're doing it in their spare time and they're experimenting, but maybe they're not so much in the industry. That's just been my experience.
Gotcha.
We like to go to Barnes and Nobles, and I'll take like the kids, and then I'll let them play at the train table, and I just look through all the books, and then I like compare them to Amazon, so that way I can kind of get like a visual in person, like John was saying, and then you can also compare the prices and everything too.
You just did that the other day.
I live there. Like, I'm always like, I have like a ridiculous collection of coding books. Like,
You and me both. And it just keeps growing. So that's basically everything we're going to cover today. We're biased. We like coding. There's so many resources out there, and as you go through your journey, you're going to find what works best for you. Yeah, Stack Overflow, there's a lot of big-headed people there, but then there are some people who really do explain things well, and you're able to find your answer there. And for those who don't know, Stack Overflow is a message board, basically, system where you can ask questions about code, essentially. If you Google how to do something in code, Stack Overflow is most likely going to show up. Yes, you can do it. I know every now and then I get a severe case of imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing? I'm going to be 40 this year. I already have a degree. Why am I doing this again? There's some other people out there who are smarter than me. And then I sit myself down. I give myself a good talking to. I tell myself to get up and get started. and do it again. And then I figure it out, and then I'm really excited because I've accomplished something, or I solved a problem. And it's, for me, that's rewarding. For what, 6-7 years, I gave up one career, worked in television news, and I gave up my career to be a stay-at-home mom because my husband was back and forth to Iraq, and my kids needed a stable environment, and so that made me, that was me staying home. So this is a way for me to, I found that code is a way for me to use the skills that I have had in the past and combine them and create something completely new. And that is exciting, to be able to say, you're not done yet. I'm not even halfway through my life. There's still a lot of time to live and to do more and to learn more, and we can do it. The other thing I would recommend, find a mentor, whether it's just, randomly somebody in the group, like John and I just, hey, all right, let's, you want a mentor? Sure, absolutely. So you'll find, you can ask, you'll have somebody to go to. Hey, I can't figure this out. Do you have any idea why this does this? Or can you explain this concept to me? You need a support system. And as military, we know how important the support system is. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. Your way, whatever works for you is the path you need to take. For me, 1 or 2 courses a semester is all I can manage, because my family takes priority. I do want to get back to work. Yes, absolutely. But I'll get there in my own time. And it's going to be different for everybody, absolutely for everyone. But the most important, have fun. If you're not having fun and you find you don't enjoy it, then why are you doing it? Ask yourself that. What is your end goal? I think that's going to be, that's going to be something, advice you're going to take for everything you do. Yes, there's some things that we have to adult and, do anyway. But when it comes to, taking on a new career, a new field, if you have to have fun at it, and you have to enjoy it, because you're going to be better for it. You're going to be a better programmer. You're going to be a better coder. You're going to be a better web developer. I mean, alarm going off here. When you're having fun, it shows. When you're passionate about something, it's going to show.
I can say one thing about a mentor, so that for people who maybe have a hard time doing it. So for the most part, a lot of boot camps now, they're in almost every major city and maybe state. Like here in Alaska, they don't have any boot camps up here. So if you're up here like me, then you're kind of out of luck. But I know most people are probably, who are in this presentation right now, that they're probably on the West Coast or the East Coast. So you're good for boot camps because they're all along those coastlines. One thing that I would do is find the closest boot camp to you, look at their schedule, call them, and then say, hey, I'm new to coding, I want to learn about it. Do you guys have any public events coming up? Go in there, sit, listen. You'll see who's presenting whatever it is. Like, you don't have to understand it, but you can go and see if coding is something for you. And then afterwards, when they have their, Q&A and maybe their social gathering, and you can probably find their email and whatnot and then speak to them privately, but you could find a mentor that way, and that would be a good thing too. Another way is to look at your local universities, because I found that most people don't know this, but you don't have to be attending a university to talk to the faculty and staff. I will tell you that because maybe you aren't the student, they won't give you priority, but you can probably look at their engineering departments or their computer science departments, or maybe even the math departments, because I know some universities link all this together. But find the professor's name, find their number, find their email, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll be able to find their office hours, and then you can drop by, introduce yourself, hey, I'm not a student here, but but I want to learn how to do this. Can you put me in the right direction? You might be able to find a mentor that way. It's just a little bit of legwork and being creative about how you approach the situation too.
Absolutely. All right. Questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to see? Like I currently have Android Studio open up on my computer. I've got an app in there as well. So if anybody wants to see that, we can open that up. Obviously I've got access to my GitHub. So if anybody wants to see GitHub, I can show you what that is. Or did anybody have any questions about, about anything here that we covered today?
Good questions.
Oh, let's see here. Anybody? No. Let me stop this share here. So we can
Don't
go
think
back
so.
in.
Okay.
No? Everybody good? Have we been remotely helpful to you today?
So is there somebody in here who's like who tends to get stuck or something on trying to learn how to code?
Are you asking the audience in general, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Michael says yes.
I think
So
getting stuck is almost a part of it.
So what is I think it would be helpful if we can like figure out where you're getting stuck or something, and then I know everybody here is probably who's been coding has probably been there.
Are you talking about it like in terms of how to troubleshoot a code issue, or
Well, you were talking about mentorship and stuff and finding people who can help you out on how to get moving, and like Milspouse Coders is one way to find a mentor.
okay. So Michael, do you have trouble? I mean, do you have troubleshooting issues, or is it mainly starting a project or finishing a project? Oh, okay. So he's saying Sudoku helps him when he gets stuck. Okay. Yeah, so that's a good thing. So that's what we touched on earlier with having a plan and whiteboarding. So that does actually help instead of keeping all of the your workflow and what you want to do in your head. It helps to visually see it, so that way you can focus on one item at a time. Because I've known, at least for me, if I'm focusing on everything at once, trying to see the big picture, I might get stuck. But it helps to have a starting point. That way you could go from point A to point Z and not get stuck and actually make measurable progress for you. Okay, Jen's leaving. Okay, all right, bye, Jen.
bye, Jen.
Bye.
Or, the other Jen.
Let us know if
Okay.
you have any other questions. Just go ahead and message us. You can message me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye. I know one of the things that I learned to do is like, okay, so my program's not working. Where is it going wrong? And like you guys said, like Michael pointed out, the pseudocode. Okay, just get a piece of paper, write out what you want it to do, and then worry about getting the full-on syntax later. That works for me.
Another thing, like so I'm not sure about Xcode, but I know in Android Studio, they do output errors. I can tell you reading the output. So learning how to read the outputting errors, it takes some time to get used to because it's pretty much in a foreign language. One thing that a lot of people do, and one thing that you might see in your development environment for whatever it is, there is a way to actually copy the error and then paste it into Google. Chances are you will find something about it because other people have had those same errors. Like it is a very common issue because other people have gone in their own that you have. Now, when you do put it into Google, you'll find many different options. Your best bet is to go through a lot of them and find the one that works for you, because some people know how to explain it better than others. Other people don't. It's just a matter of having the grit and the perseverance to actually look through and figure out why it's not working. And then once you find it, you'll go, oh, this is what I did wrong. Like I do that a lot just because sometimes the errors don't make sense. And sometimes the errors that you get are because you have something wrong up high in your code and it's not actually near where they say the error is. It's just a matter of how your code is interpreting it.
That's when we get into the logic errors and stuff like that. Instead of compiler errors, like, okay, what's your logic? What are you thinking? Because the computer is going to do it a certain way, and it's going to want to do it that way. So usually if there's a problem, it's somewhere along the lines of your thinking.
Mike has something to add, so I'll let him add something. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I can't hear you. No, sir. Do you unmute yourself? I don't see you. I don't see a mute button there.
Still can't hear you.
Is your microphone plugged into your computer?
I got.
There you are.
There.
You hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, we hear.
Okay. One of the things that I do is it varies in different languages, but I like to comment like to the console, right to the console at different parts of my application that I'm making, or like in PHP, it's echoing. So at different parts of the application, you have something that prints out, and then where you get the last thing printed, that tells you where your error is, if that makes sense.
I got you.
Yeah, so that works real well for me. I mean, it can get kind of verbose, but the outcome is basically knowing what's going on at different parts of where you are working in the application.
That makes sense. I'm trying to understand how to do that with an Android Studio, and just yesterday or the day before, I couldn't get something to print to the log, and I was again searching why won't something print to log in Android Studio, and eventually I just had to restart the program, turn it off, turn it back on again, and that got it to print. But I think learning how to to debug using that technique is really important, and I wish I had learned that sooner because I struggle with it now. But it's definitely a skill that I'd like to learn more about. Maybe we can cover that later.
Just to comment on that too, you might have seen what Michael was talking about. So let's say maybe you're installing new software on your computer, and sometimes you just might get bored and read what it's doing. So all the different comments that you're seeing, what it's saying, like, okay, so it's saying like installing this file or installing that file or moving this file, those are kind of like console messages, just letting you know as a user, visually seeing what's going on, and then your progress bar, because what's happening in the background is just all the machine stuff, and you really don't know what's going on unless there's something to actually tell you what's happening. That's a good way to keep up with your program if you don't have anything visually to tell you for feedback, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You can break it up into blocks too and just see what works and then comment off sections of it. And always check your syntax, especially with like Java, if you're missing a curly bracket or spelling or
Darn brackets.
those brackets get you every time.
Every time. Every time.
If you have a good linter, it really, really helps.
A linter?
Yes.
What's that?
So it's like a spell check for your code.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I get. Yeah, it depends on. I know some people write code directly to like Notepad. I like the IDEs that are interactive, that'll put like angry red lines under things and say, "This isn't right. Fix it." I find that very helpful. And Jen says Adam has a good linter.
Yes, I love Atom. And I use is it Intellect or whatever the IDE is for Java, and then PyCharm for Python.
VS Code is pretty good too.
I am not familiar with these. You said VS Code.
It's we used to use Atom in boot camp, and then in the middle they switched it over to VS Code.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. I haven't come across those yet, so still how new I am.
And then so Michael says most code editors have lint extensions that you can download. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know if you're using something like a step up from Notepad++, that's really good because it's color coordinated, but also lets you pick your language that you're working in, and you can add stuff to it as you need it. And then also there's Sublime, but I know people like to use Notepad because it's pretty much bare bones. It doesn't have the extra, I guess, if you will, noise to tell you what's going on. Like some people just like to code that way because it's just bare and you have to figure it out yourself, basically.
That makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions? MJ or Jessica B, do you guys have any questions, or Jen? Even though I know Jen knows some of the stuff too.
If anybody wants to collaborate on projects as well, it's a good way to learn how to use GitHub and Git.
Yeah, I think that's definitely more. And don't be afraid to post, if anybody's working on something, just post it to the study group page. I've had people help me solve code issues that way. trying to think of anything else. I think a group project would be fun. If a bunch of us can get involved with something like that, that could be fun. And then we can always do like a code share too. We can have a screen up, do another video chat, and just do a code share screen. We can all see the code as it happens. So
I think group projects are a good way to show that you can work in a group, since most developers work in groups anyways.
yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
Hey, Michael, is that you trying to be funny? You're still waiting to see Carly's Android app, or you actually want to see it?
You actually want to see my Android app?
Okay, so yes. Okay.
Yes. All right. Let's see. I'll bring up the one I just submitted. Hold on a second. I'll code share that. Okay. Share my screen here. All right. Share screen. All right. So here is Android Studio. This is the quiz app I had to create. I can make that a little bigger here. It's on children's books. You have to pick a topic that you know and develop a quiz on it. So I have a $50 phone that I got from Walmart, and it's a Samsung, and it works really great for testing apps on. But I learned how to do multiple choice questions using radio buttons and check marks and stuff like that. But over here in the center, this is the XML. This is the main activity XML that I've learned how to put the different layout views in. With a linear layout, it's going to be everything laid out either vertically or horizontally. And then you're just putting in these different views. Like when I click on this image view here, it highlights the main one that I got over here at the top of the screen for the little graphic that I created and put in. And as I click the other text views, it'll tell you what to do. I learned with this app more about getting my code organized, making sure you get the comments in here. In XML, I don't like it if you hard code your text. So meaning like this is where this text box is, and what it actually is, that text that was just there is in a string file, and I've got the string file named subtitle. So the strings are all kept in another XML file, so they're easier to change if the app ever gets fully developed for any reason. It's easier to change and update the app by putting all your strings into one location. You can also do it with styles, the layout, heights and margins, colors, your primary colors. There's like a full file over here. You can change it. Then there over in this file here is the Java. There's still a lot that I'm learning with this. I had to learn how to put my ID button, or my call by ID, in the onCreate file, which means as soon as the app is created, it's going to look for these IDs. They're red right now because the file was cleaned before I submitted it. But then I've got some methods here. At the end of the quiz, you're going to submit the quiz and it's going to be graded. So I just got all these basic if statements. And after this was graded the first time, it was sent back to me. They said, you're not grading correctly. It turns out it was just for the check boxes. It turns out I needed to include another part, or a checkbox that was skipped, but I need to make sure it says not. So I had to put the exclamation point in front and say it's all of these things and not this one for it to be correct. Then you have to make sure you have a scoring, scoring section in here as well. And then I wanted to make sure you could restart the quiz. So this is the restart quiz method. So it's going to reset all the radio groups and checkboxes and change the write-ins to empty strings. And then hopefully return it back to the top of the app, because this app is in a scroll view. So as you do the app, you're going to scroll down, and it also resets the score. So that was a lot of fun to do. And this is one of the projects through the Udacity Android Basics course. I think in the basics course, this is the final app. In the nano degree course, this is the third app. Third of, how many more? 9 total apps. So I'm trying to work through the next batch of code with Udacity, watching the videos, taking quizzes, and modifying code as I go, to learn different ways of creating different apps. The next app we're doing is a multi-screen app. So I'm learning how to create these different activities. So it's more than one screen. So I click this button, go to the next screen. So I'm enjoying it. I think this app creation is a lot of fun. Yes, use the question. Good stuff, Carly. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you. All right, so that's what I got there. Anybody have any other questions? You've been in here for, wow, over an hour. That's awesome. Anybody have code they need to work on? I know that's on my list of things to do when I'm done here, is to go to the next thing in code and learn about arrays within Java. So
I'm coming up on my project week, but I'm taking nights, so it's actually 2 weeks, not just 1 week. So we're going to be pitching our project ideas soon. So if anybody has any
awesome.
ideas for a full stack app, yeah, that'd be cool.
Cool. Well, good luck.
I'm a web developer, Michael.
Excellent. Well, there you go. Let's connect. That's great. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you showing up. I know sometimes it's hard with schedules and stuff like that, in different time zones, like it's crazy. But we appreciate you and thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, please just go ahead and post on the message board in the study group. And hopefully there'll always be somebody around to ask answer. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
It's nice to meet everyone.
It's nice to meet you too.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome. Cool. Everybody thinks, okay, cool. Awesome. So we're done. So,
All right. Thanks, everybody.
all right.